Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and in this video we're going to be talking about the 824B patch notes. So this is the patch that released on the 17th, not the one that released the 824A patch notes, I guess, that released in early December. So I'll have timestamps in the description. I'll also have a link to this Google Doc. Be sure to check out the rest of the content on the channel as well. We have tier lists. For every patch, we have a coaching playlist, we have individual champion playlists, individual champion guides. I stream most nights starting around 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you like good conversations about League of Legends, be sure to check out the channel. Okay, let's go ahead and get in here. And like and subscribe as well if you enjoy it so that other people can find the content as well. Okay, so they're trying to market this patch as not being that significant, but just being some really quick and easy changes to specific champions. However, I think that it is going to shake up the meta in the bot lane at least a little bit, or further solidify an ongoing trend that I identified at the start of the 824A patch notes. But let's work our way through this here. Okay, Akali and Pyke. So Akali, what they're doing now is they're reverting the nerf they made last patch. So the Shroud is going to last 5 seconds at level 1 again. But what they're doing is they're saying that people are going to have more time to actually attack Akali whenever she reveals herself, when she's in the Shroud. So it says targeted abilities and uncancelable basic attacks, so like Gnosis' Q, so empowered basic attacks aren't canceled, but it sounds like normal basic attacks can still be canceled. So I'll have to see this in action. I haven't seen it yet, so I'm not entirely sure just how much of an impact this is going to make. It also scales how long it takes you to go into the Shroud, now scales with minutes rather than levels. And so I assume this is going to have it scale more slowly. So we'll see. I mean, here's the thing. Akali, I believe, for most people is more annoying than she is actually good at most ELO brackets. If you get a hold of her, you can kill her. She is squishy. You know, she has some decent escapes with her fog, with her little shuriken. She can flip over walls and things like that. But if she falls behind, she's really bad a lot of times because she just doesn't have any CC. She doesn't have a lot of utility. She's just pure damage. And so she can be good if you're really good on her. Of course, there are going to be highlight reels of Akali, but I think for most people, she's not that great. And, you know, the stats kind of bear that out. Whereas it's like even at Plat Plus, I would assume that, yeah, she only has like a 43% win rate overall. So I know that she's got kind of like Zoe syndrome. Now, Zoe, I think, was actually a powerhouse, you know, at one point. But, like, at least Zoe won some games. So she deserved to be nerfed. But I said she's like Zoe and that she's just really, really annoying. Like, people hate to play against her. And a lot of that derives from her Shroud being this kind of new mechanic, this true invisibility or whatever that towers can't see. So she only has a 45% win rate, which is just absolutely abysmal. So she doesn't actually win a lot of games. It just feels terrible to play against her, as it feels like there's not as much counterplay to that invisibility. So I think that's okay. I mean, she is a fun champion for people that play her, that enjoy her. She's cool, you know. And she does, like, put up some pretty good highlight reels. So I think she's kind of like Yasuo in that sense, a little like Zoe. Yasuo in the sense that there are big highlight reels and everyone hates him as well. Yasuo does have a higher win rate, though. And then Zoe, people hated her until she got nerfed into the dirt. So I'm okay with this change. I don't think there needs to be that much done. We'll see when pro season picks up just how strong she is. But as far as solo queue goes, I think she's fine. Now, Pyke is a little bit more annoying. I think Pyke's win rate hasn't been that far out of control. I feel like it's less than 50% overall, but he is, you know, another champion that's very frustrating to play against because of the execute. But I think that the real reason is because his healing is just ridiculous on his passive. He heals back what feels like his entire health bar anytime that he goes invisible. So, yeah, he's got only a 49% win rate, but he just feels very effective, just because of that, the healing and the execution. So he's okay. I don't think he needs that many nerfs. This is mostly targeted towards mid Pyke, which is a little bit more problematic, particularly at like challenger elo brackets. So I agree something can be done, but I don't think that much has to be done. If they want to do something, I would nerf his passive. But so what they're doing is they're just making it where it takes longer to scale up, and it has less scaling at the top end, but they also added the lethality scaling a couple of patches ago. So this is just bringing him back down to where he was before the lethality buffs to an extent. And then this is hurting his wave clear a little bit too. Yeah, he can still wave clear with his E, but it's a lot more dangerous to do that because people can potentially catch him out. But, you know, we'll see. He's still an okay champion. They did lower his magic resist, which does matter when facing things like Zyra and Bran in the bot lane. So I think he's relatively fine. He's a pretty high-risk champion, so I think he's all right overall. He is frustrating to play against, but he's okay. Okay, they did buff Caitlyn. And I will say also, just make sure that if you want accurate information about the patch notes, I should have said this at the beginning, but I just forgot. Make sure you're tuning into people like me or Freak or people who actually look at the real patch notes when they're released, or Skara. You know, do not go to these all-caps YouTubers that try to release patch notes videos like on Friday before the patch. Because they try to get the scoop, they try to do it earlier than everyone else, but they're using the public beta environment, which is not always accurate for what's actually going to show up on the patch notes, and no one ever holds them accountable for this. So, for instance, they were testing a lot of stuff on this patch that didn't come through. They were going to give Vayne 50% cooldown on her Q whenever her ult is active. They were going to give Ornn a complete rework. Pretty much, they were going to give Sejuani a bunch more damage at the exchange of taking away some of her CC. So there were a lot of things they were planning on doing. They were going to potentially change Callista by lowering her Ren damage to large epic monsters and giving her more damage on her Q. So there was a lot of stuff they were testing, but it's not actually in the patch, right? And if you go and look at some of these all-capsers, you know, talking about what's coming in patch 7.24b, they probably talked about that stuff, and it wasn't covered. So just make sure that you're always up to date with that. Now, they might bring some of those patches back on 9.21, but that's like a month away, right? And so that's just a little PSA there. Just make sure that you're actually watching, you know, if you want accurate information, people who read over the actual patch notes when they're released, because that's not always the same as the PvE. Okay. So Caitlyn's getting a buff. I still don't think she's going to be that great under Diamond. She's okay at Diamond if people have a lot of experience on her. So I always say she's deceptively hard to play. It seems like it would be simple because she has long range. She can stay a safe distance and just last hit. But her scaling is terrible. She has really, really low base attack speed, and she has no steroids for her base attacks in her kit. So if you think about something like Twitch, who gets bonus AD off of his ult, he gets you know, bonus attack speed off of his Q, or someone like Tristana, who gets a lot of extra attack speed off of her Q. You know, almost every AD carry has some kind of steroid, something that gives them bonus AD, something that gives them bonus attack speed, or otherwise enhances their auto attacks. You know, you have the Varus on-hit effects, Kai'Sa on-hit effects, Kog'Maw on-hit effects. Caitlyn doesn't have any of that, right? I mean, as good as you're going to get with Caitlyn is her headshot mechanic, which is really kind of more for like timed burst attacks rather than like sustained damage. It does do some extra damage if you're in a fight long enough, but by and large, she is mostly kind of a poke sort of burst type of champion rather than a sustained attacker, because she doesn't have those on-hit effects and she has really low base attack speed. So that's why she's really bad most of the time at like platinum and lower, is because people just sit there and just play her like she's a normal 80 carry bot lane. They'll just sit there and try to last hit with their farm and just try to farm up, maybe hit somebody occasionally, but you lose as Caitlyn. You're going to get outscaled by every other major 80 carry. You have to really lay into them, be super aggressive, like get a ton of auto attacks on them, threaten those towers, take it down quickly, have, you know, pristine trap management to zone people out, to create a safer space for her. And also, you have to be able to combo when they step on those traps, right? The combo is they step on a trap, you auto attack, you net backwards, you hit them with a Q, and then you auto attack again. That way you get a double headshot and a Q hit in there, and that does a lot of damage. But a lot of Caitlyn's, when somebody you know, steps on the trap, all they'll do is like one auto attack, and that's it, because they won't be in a position to capitalize on that. So she's deceptively hard to use because you have to leverage that early game strength and really close the game out early, because if you go late, you're going to get destroyed. And so that's why I don't recommend her for most people. So I don't, and historically, she's very oppressive at like the pro level when she is really good. So it is dangerous to buff her. She was like the AD carry of 2017 for the first half until they nerfed her into the dirt. And then that mantle passed over to Tristana for the back half. But, you know, she's okay. If you're really good on her, you can make her work, but you have to really put the effort in, and you have to have that, like, super killer mentality early on to make her competitive. Okay, so they're increasing the base damage on the Q, but they're having it fall off a little bit faster. I haven't done the exact math on this, but I think overall this is a buff. Obviously, it's a buff if you just hit somebody in the open, not through minions. But let's see, if you throw this through, like, pass-through damage is 60%. Is it per person hit? I think it's just anyone after the first. So, yeah, that's still going to be stronger. So it's like 7% down, which would be something like losing, I don't know, 3 damage off of this, 3 or 4 damage. So, yeah, definitely a buff. Nice poke. Increases her wave clear a little bit. Then the ace in the hole is very interesting because you could potentially snipe out mid lane or help your jungler by, you know, sniping to add in some extra damage there. So that does give her a little bit more zone control over some areas. I mean, 3,500 is really far. You can probably step up to about the Dragon Pit in middle and still ult the mid lane from there. So, or the Dragon Pit, you know, the Dragon Pit in the river, in the middle of the river, and still ult the mid lane from there. Or you could ult blue buff. Not the buff itself, but if your jungler is trying to contest the enemy blue buff, they're invading or something, you could, like, ult the jungler from there. So I think that definitely helps out and sort of solidify that she is this kind of long-range zone of control threat. I think she probably needs a little bit more help if we really want to see her back in the meta. We'll see. They're saying they're going to change the crit items in the first, like, 4 patches of 9.1, so we'll see how that goes. If crit is really good, she's really good with crit because of the way that interacts with her headshot mechanic. Okay, Missile Barrage, probably not going to matter. Corki's still going to be bad. I mean, it is 90 extra damage early on. It's just, I'm honestly not exactly sure why Corki's bad. I think that the main reason is sort of similar to Caitlyn. He doesn't have any steroids in his kit, so he's just going to get outscaled. He's mostly just a caster, but, like, his mana costs are too high and his damage is too low, and he doesn't get, like he has really poor AD scaling as well. Like, at least Caitlyn has the headshot mechanic that scales with AD. You know, later on, if you get to the 3 crit items, if you can get to something like Storm Razor, Rapid Fire Cannon, Infinity Edge, or whatever, then he can still scale. But, like, Corki's ratios are abysmal. You know, only a 0.5 on his Q. It's 100 mana. Only, like, the base damage is fairly low. It's easy to dodge early on. That was the big thing that was, like, the nail in the coffin from Corki back in the day. Because this used to just be a point-click boom, like, does damage, you know, so he'd have some pretty decent harass in the laning phase. Valkyrie, I mean, nobody's going to sit in this. The special delivery can be really good whenever it's up. I wish they would make the special delivery, like, happen more often and be more interactive. So, like, maybe if you get a kill or an assist, it lowers special delivery's time by 30 seconds or something like that. I don't know. Maybe that's too much. But just something where it's like, if you're ahead, that could be an additional kind of snowball mechanic to sort of solidify his position as an early game sort of caster AD carry that's going to fall off later. Gatling gun has virtually no scaling on it. And, I mean, if they sit in it the whole time, sure. But most people are going to be able to get out of this, you know. And then, like, missile damage for an ultimate, like, it's pretty anemic damage, you know. It's like, okay, it pokes, but it just really doesn't have that much of an AD ratio until much later in the game. So, I don't know. They need to give him some scaling. And he's just kind of weird, too. He does, like, magic damage instead of physical damage, which is cool. I don't know. He needs some help. He needs, like... They need to decide what they want him to do, right? Do they want him to be kind of this poke caster type of champion? If so, they need to give him, like, some better ratios and just some higher numbers on that type of stuff. They want him to be, like, a roaming burst damage type of champ, like have him play around special delivery more. I don't know. But whatever it is, they need to figure it out because right now he's still going to be in the dumpster. I don't think his win rate is that, like, maybe it's really bad. I don't know. It's probably around like 50%. It's just you never see the guy because they're just way better choices most of the time. Let me see here. It might actually, yeah, it actually is pretty abysmal. Yeah, 46%. So I don't know. He's a weird champion, and it's just like difficult to justify why you would ever pick him over another option right now. I mean, even if your team, like, maybe historically it was thought, well, if you needed magic damage when they, made him do mostly magic, and it's like, and I want someone safer than Kog'Maw, then maybe that was a niche that Corki could fill in the past. But now you have Kai'Sa, who does, like, is the supreme magic damage, 80 carry. And then you've also got things like Varus that are still pretty good, like magic damage hybrid champs, and Kog'Maw is still like on the table. So there are just so many options like out competing him for what I think his original niche was. So they just need to reinvent him and just rework him at this point, I think. Okay, Singe doesn't matter, still going to be bad. I don't know. I mean, the biggest knock is like feeding Singe now actually gives gold because of the way they reworked the gold bounty system a couple of patches ago, so that hurts him a lot. Laning phase matters a ton, and he puts up like no pressure in the laning phase pretty much. Like, you're going to be giving up tower plates a lot of the times as Singed. It's possible later on, if you get the correct build, a lot of people don't build the right stuff on him, but if you get something like Leandre's Rylai's, then you can put up some pretty good wave clear and put up some pretty good damage later on, but he just has a lot of problems right now, a lot of really bad matchups. I mean, if you're a one-trick Singe, I guess you can win with him, but I don't think this is going to change the calculus too much on him. I think he's still going to be a relatively weak pick right now. Okay, Tristana, they are buffing her. I know Tristana doesn't have a huge win rate right now, 48%, but Tristana is very dangerous to buff, because like her kit is so overloaded, right? Her W is a really long-range escape that also gets you out of crowd control. It makes you pretty much unstoppable whenever you're like in. Everyone's seen this happen before. There are highlight reels on YouTube about it. But whenever you start the rocket jump, if anyone hits you with anything like a blitz grab, thresh hook, whatever it is, you're still going to get out of it and jump. So that makes her really frustrating to play against. That makes her very safe. She also has the knockaway with her ultimate. So she has like basically two really, really good escape mechanics and space creating mechanics with her W and her ult. She can also reset her jumps. So if she's really far ahead, she can snowball very well by either triggering the bomb on somebody or by getting a kill or an assist. So that makes her really dangerous. And in this meta, her ability to take towers really quickly could definitely spiral out of control. She's very, very good at taking tower platings because of that bomb. And she scales really well later on into the game because she gets more range and she gets a very long attack speed. And she does a lot of damage at level 6. People forget this has 300 base damage on it, which is ridiculous. That's more than like most mage ults. And it's a point click on 120 seconds. So Triss is super dangerous. I would be, if I was Riot, I would be very careful buffing her too much because I don't think she's as bad as people think she is right now. And certainly if they're going to buff crit items, you need to be very careful with her. She's really, really good with crit because she gets all that extra attack speed. And she has, like, pretty nice, like, AD ratios. So yeah, I would just be very careful. So they are buffing her. Will it matter? I mean, 10 damage early on is okay. Like, this gives a maximum of 30 damage. I think the ratio is a lot higher too, 2.86. I don't think it's going to totally bring her back, but it'll certainly help. The problem is, like, she's fairly weak early on. If they ever nerf Lucian, which they definitely should over the next 3 patches, if they nerf Lucian and maybe they'll probably won't nerf Draven, but if Draven just falls out of the meta a little bit and they nerf Lucian, like, you could definitely see her start to come back. Like, her big problem is she only has 525 attack range early, so she can get bullied by range supports and by longer range AD carries. But yeah, she definitely gets a little bit better with this, although, like I said, I still think she'll be, maybe tier 3 AD carry. I think she's better than her win percentage suggests, but at the same time, I don't think she's going to be top tier. Okay, Varus, uncharged, active. Okay, so this I don't think is going to matter that much with this weird active they put on his W. It's just stupid. I don't know. I thought he was fine before. Like, I like him having, like, good on-hit damage on his W so you can build that hybrid build on him and feel unique and effective, with the Gensus, plus people were doing Gensus, Nashor's death cap on him at one point before they nerfed his W. I think that's a cool, like, ability to go AP or to go AD, to go something like, Blade of the Ruined King, Nashor's Hurricane, or Blade of the Ruined King, Ginsu's Hurricane. But anyways, he's a cool champ. He's got some interesting sort of, like, his ultimate's pretty cool. He can snipe people out with his Q. I like the lethality Varus. I thought that was very skill expressive and very interesting back in the day when his Q did, like, really good poke damage. I guess for pro play, they had to nerf that out, but I wish they would bring some of that back because there really aren't that many good poke 80 carries aside from, like, Ezreal, who's questionable. Okay. Chain of Corruption, 50 extra damage is pretty legit, though. So, I don't know. Very interesting champion. Lots of potential there in his kit, but I don't expect him to skyrocket up too much. 2 damage, like, what? Why? What's the point? Is this really going to make or break his jungle clear? Or, like, how he kills people in fights? Like, they're getting even more meme than they were in the past. It was like 3 AD on some champions was the meme last year. Now they're doing 2 AD. Are you kidding me? Okay. Anyways, yeah, probably not going to matter. I mean, Warwick's not terrible. I don't even know, like, why they're... Where do they come up with that number? And why Warwick? Like, Warwick's fine, I think. I mean, he's not an amazing jungler, but he rarely is. He's just kind of like a jack of all trades. Like, you can throw him in there, and he's all right, in most games. 52%. He's okay, Maybe they did that because they nerfed Tiamat or something down the line and they just wanted to help him with his clear a little bit. I don't know. It's like, why bother, If it's not like 5 AD, then, like, why put it on there? I mean, 5 AD can start to matter, but 2. Anyways, okay. So this is something that will create a lot of mixed feelings in the community, I think. On my channel, a lot of people are probably going to love this because I know there's a lot of people that love to play Soraka, love to play Janna, Sona. Obviously, I'm a support content creator, so that's good because these champions are going to get better. People on my channel are going to like it. I'm going to be able to play these champions more. But it is also potentially dangerous because people hate shielding and healing champions because they don't know how to deal with them. I mean, that's just it. People just won't aim for the Soraka and they'll call her overpowered. Or, they won't focus out Janna. They won't save CC to interrupt Janna's ult because they'll just disrespect her. And they'll just say it's like just an e-girl champ that has no skill expression and it's just bad and all this stuff. It's like, I don't really understand the argument. Because, like, I was reading, like, esports.com or I don't remember what it was, some article where they were saying that, like, this was really bad because enchanters have, like, really low skill expression and they're terrible champs because they're just, like, point click. It's like, there are quite a few champions that do damage that are basically point click at the end of the day, especially if they get fed. And a lot of these enchanters are very squishy. Like, if you get a hold of them with a blitz hook or a Pyke hook, or if Alistar engages on them or whatever, they're going to die, most of them. And so you have to be very careful with your positioning, and they're very vulnerable to assassins. And yeah, like, with some of their abilities on some champions, you are targeting your own allies. And to some extent, it's like, yeah, there's not as much skill expression in that as, some other, like, really, like, Thresh or something, for example. But if you look at, like, Alistar, I mean, Alistar is basically a point-click champion, right? You just WQ on top of somebody, and, like, his mechanics are extremely low, and the major, like, question there is, who do you go in on and when do you go in? Like, that's what you're asking most of the time. And how do you roam, right? So it's not mechanics at all on Alistar. I mean, I guess you can mess up the combo, but, I mean, you can misclick your heals and shields, too, on the wrong person in a crowded team fight. But, yeah, I mean, they're just asking different questions. Like, at the heart of it, there's not a ton of, like, skill expression in most champs in League of Legends. There's some as far as, like, mechanics, but a lot of it is just learning how to play around a champion's strengths and your macro game and things like that. So, anyways, I think this is overall good for the game. I know there will be haters, but one major thing to keep in mind also is this is not just going to help Janna and Soraka and things like that. This helps 80 carries. And that's what a lot of people don't understand, is the reason that 80 carries were so strong in 2017, or at least a large reason, was because enchanters were very strong. Because Redemption was strong in that meta. Ardent Censer was strong in that meta. And that adds extra power to the 80 carries so they hit their power spike faster. You know, yeah, you may not be able to get to 3 items, and you might be a 2 or 3 item AD carry, depending on who you pick. But if you have an Ardent Sensor helping you out, if you have a Janna that can peel enemies off of you so you get more auto attacks in, then all of a sudden you're going to be a lot stronger. Or if you have Janna giving you extra AD, or Lulu giving you extra attack speed with her Whimsy. These champions, these types of champions, typically help AD carries more than any other role, at least in the early game. Right, and so this gives extra power to AD carries. It's not just enchanters, it's extra power to AD carries. Versus if you're playing something like Brand, you're not really helping your AD carry out in terms of like direct buffs, right? You are doing some damage, which is nice, but you know, you're not going to be getting things like Ardent Sensor. You're not going to be getting Redemption. You're not going to be getting Mikhails to get them out of the CC, right? So I think that this is good for AD carries. I think it's good for enchanters. It's also good for tanks, because tanks are another thing that are conspicuously missing from this meta. And a major aspect of AD carries that I've mentioned before in previous videos is that, like, how are they important? How do they contribute to the game? Is tank busting, right? If Talon can't blow up a Sejuani, or you know, Kha'Zix can't run up and one-shot the Ornn, then you're going to need another type of champion who can do sustained damage, that can get through all of their health and armor. Who could do that? AD carries can do that. Historically, AD carries are the high sustained damage dealers. The problem right now is games are so fast and damage is so front-loaded, you know, people die in less than a second routinely to a lot of champions out there, that AD carries don't matter, because why would you play a champion if everybody dies in like 2 seconds or less anyways? Why do you need a champion that's going to put out a ton of damage over 5 seconds, right? Why would you not just pick a champion that front loads a lot of damage for those first 2 seconds? And so that is another thing that will help AD carries out, is if they bring tanks back a little bit. And that's something people don't ever talk about. They don't ever talk about the ecosystem of League of Legends and how it's important to have all of these things in balance. You know, you need enchanters to be viable so they can help, you know, support their AD carry early on with these extra buffs from Ardent Sensor and the different, you know, elements of their kit, right? You need them to give that extra survivability. One thing they've been floating around is like, well, what if we gave the AD carries extra magic resist earlier, you know, gave them back their armor or more health, or like better defensive items? It's like, just let them have an enchanter. The enchanter gives them extra health effectively by giving them the shields, by healing them, by peeling them. Like, that's the thing, is AD carry is not supposed to be a do-it-yourself champion most of the time. It's supposed to be intricately tied to the support. So anyways, and you might say, well, how does this help out tanks? Because it gives them a lot more effective health, right? You know, that Sejuani, they're really not going to be able to burst through the Sejuani without an AD carry if Janna's sitting back there shielding them, or Sona's shielding them, right? And that's part of the frustration with people that play assassins, or that play, you know, some types of fighters out there, is it's like, well, how do you get through all of these shields? Well, through good macro or good positioning, and you pick off the shielder, right? You force Janna to rotate and you pick her off in the jungle when she's by herself, or you get a really good flank in with Camille and you blow her up instantly. You know, that's what it should be like. Assassins should have to develop a strategy for proper target prioritization. They shouldn't be able to just jump and kill anybody on the enemy team anytime, one shot, when they get 3 kills, right? They should have to say, okay, well, I'm going to avoid this Braum because I can't kill him. I'm going to avoid, you know, the Sejuani. I can't kill him. Now I have to get proper vision and try to figure out a way to flank or to pick off some of those other 3 squishy champions on the enemy team. So it forces more sort of interaction, more interesting counterplay. The vision game matters a lot more. Positioning matters a lot more, because you can't just kill anyone anytime you want anymore. You have to pick specific targets, and that's what assassination should be like. It should be that kind of skill expression. Can I figure out a way to maneuver to the backline to kill those squishy targets? Right? I'm actually taking a risk by doing that. You know, it's not just like smash my hand on the keyboard and kill somebody with an assassin. It should involve finesse. It should involve good decision-making and crisp timing, right? So overall, this is very good for the ecosystem to bring this stuff back. Now, they do still have the nerfs on the shield champion. So the Janna, primarily Janna, got completely butchered by those nerfs. This will help her out a little bit, but she's still going to have some problems there. Lulu as well. But this is definitely going to help out Soraka. It's definitely going to help out Nami, Sona. They're going to have a field day with these changes. So I think that making the enchanters a little bit stronger is a good move for those reasons. It's bringing balance back to the ecosystem, which ultimately will bring AD carries back, will bring tanks back, which is maybe 1 or 2 extra buffs. If they buff the crit items and, you know, they rework a couple of the tanks, sort of buff them, then they could definitely be back. Now, enchanters aren't that bad. Like they were saying in here, enchanters are bad. Enchanters are not bad right now. And I talked about that in 824B. Enchanters are already very strong. This is something that I disagree with later on in the patch where they're going to nerf Zeke's, is that it's the tanks that are bad right now. You know, because if we look here, we've got Enchanter. Like if we look at things that have like a decent, let's just look at pick rate, I guess, here, rather than win rate. If you look at the stuff that's actually getting picked and winning, you know, it's going to be Enchanters most of the time. Like Pyke's at 49%. You know, Thresh is at 50%. These are like engaged tanks. Those are the best kinds of tanks. I still think that Tank Pyke is really good. I guess you could call him an assassin or whatever. He's not an enchanter. Alistar's at 48%. Leona's at 50%. But we've got Nami at 51.8. You know, Janna's 51.7. Soraka's 51.1. Sona is 53.6. Right, and so the enchanters are very strong. The tanks are weak, and of course the 2, you know, good mages are strong, right? So you've got your Brand and your Zyra. So this is a relatively even ecosystem. I mean, you don't want your supports to have much more than a 52% win rate whenever possible. Sona's always going to have more because she's so consistent. She's so easy to play and scales so hard. But like everyone else, you know, I think it's relatively imbalanced, so I hope they don't do too much more. I don't like the Zeke's change at all. I don't mind the Forbidden Idol changes. That's okay. But, like, the Zeke's nerf is going to be pretty rough. So I think the support ecosystem is pretty good right now. I do think this is going to bump, you know, Sona and Soraka into the stratosphere in terms of, like, their power relative to other supports right now. But overall, like I said, good for my community. Probably good for the game overall, but I'm not entirely sure that it's necessary. I think it would have been a lot better if they didn't nerf the Zeke's and they did this. I think that would have been helpful, but it's kind of a dangerous game to play, but I think it's a good move to help, mostly to help AD carries become more viable in the mid game. Okay, Alistar, don't understand why they're nerfing him. He's got a 48% win rate. I mean, I do understand. It's because of pro play and challenger, but, you know, they're lowering his damage. I just feel like this is not the way to do it. Like, why is he good in Challenger? Why is he good in Pro Play? He's consistent on his engage, and he's super tanky off of his ult. What I would have done is I just would have nerfed his ult or something. Like, maybe they could make the ult to where it doesn't reduce tower damage or something like that, like a lot of other ults. So he couldn't dive as early, but he'd still have really good strength in team fights. If you needed to, just give him, like, higher damage mitigation, maybe 70%, but just make it not apply to towers or something like that. I think would have been a good way to nerf it at the pro level, but dives don't usually go that well in solo queue anyway, so I think nerfing it at the pro level with that would have been good, but this is mostly like a solo queue change, and I don't think he's that oppressive in solo queue, so they're hurting his early game damage without any compensatory buffs on a 48% champ. So, you know, I don't like it, but it is what it is. I think that's definitely going to hurt Alistar a lot for his all-ins early. You know, he may not be as guaranteed to kill that Sona or to kill that Janna now, and then he's going to get outscaled real hard at 2 items. So, I think that's rough. Cassiopeia does deserve a nerf. She's extremely strong on this patch. She's a super high skill cap champ that also has a high win rate, and that usually means there's something wrong. You know, if Cassiopeia is starting to get into like 52, 53% range, if she's more consistent than Ahri is, there's a problem. Because Ahri is much safer and just much more solo queue friendly than Cassiopeia should be. So people, like, the problem is when she's this good in solo queue, people in pro play are just going to absolutely butcher people with this champion. Like, she's going to be pick ban every game if she's this good in solo queue. So I do think they needed to nerf her a little bit. Nerfing the Q is interesting. I don't know if it needed both nerfs, but this is probably fine. I mean, she still has, it's really cheap early game. You're not going to be spamming this as much as your E, so it's probably okay in the early game. You know, it's going to cost 10 more mana at level 5. for something you probably cast every like 5 seconds. It's okay, you know. You don't have to like use this in the laning phase that much. You can just use it for harass and then wave clear with your E, or just last hit with your E rather. So I think it's okay. And then similarly, you know, you're losing some damage. You know, you're losing 175 here. So this is going to hurt her poke a little bit in the laning phase. Later on, she's going to have enough mana to cast this probably. And, you know, your E is going to be your main source of damage as the game unfolds. So I think this is a reasonable way to do it. She's still going to have the really strong Comet interaction with her poison. She's still going to have, you know, kind of that new early game power spike with going something like a Ludens directly into, you know, either Morellonomicon or a Leandries. So I think she'll still be effective. Yeah, you know, so she might lose like 1.5% or something, but I think she'll still be good. That's a pretty good way to balance it, I think. I have no idea why his base health regen was 8. That's ridiculous on a champion like this that should get punished. So I think that's a pretty good nerf. Kassadin's okay. You know, if he gets really, if he gets into the late game, he's just an oppressive force. But he is very weak early, I think. Somehow he can still farm a decent amount early on if he takes the right runes. So, you know, maybe that's what they're trying to address, though, is his health regen here. So maybe they could nerf the shield on his Q. Maybe that would be a good way to help, but I think he's okay. His win rate is a little high, but he's okay. Neeko, I really don't think she needs a nerf. I mean, her win rate is really low. I know people aren't very practiced on her right now. I think mid lane is her best position. Where is she on here? I think mid lane's her best position, but I think she does require a lot of setup. Yeah, I mean, she's at 50%. She is banned a lot, I guess. I don't know. I feel like she's not that oppressive, though. I think she's a cool champion. She's interesting. If anything, like maybe dial back the damage on her ult a little bit, or the AP scaling on it. I feel like her ult like does quite a bit of damage, but I think her Q is fine. I mean, I don't know. Losing 10 and then 15 off of the subsequent flashes or whatever, the subsequent applications, it's probably okay. I just feel like it's a bit harsh. I think that she does have weaknesses. I think there are much more oppressive things out there in the mid lane still that they have not nerfed. Irelia, Aatrox, that they haven't given real nerfs. I know they've said they're going to nerf those champs on the next couple of patches, but I don't know. I think she would have been fine. Okay, Tiamat. This is a pretty substantial nerf to a lot of champions. 125 gold doesn't sound like much, but that is an extra minion wave. So that can delay people, particularly at kind of lower elo brackets where people don't last hit very well. This will delay them quite a bit. But this champion is overpowered, and you can tell, or this item is overpowered, and you can tell because people get it and they just don't even complete it. They just want that wave clear. So just having an item that gives you that extra wave clear early on is really, really strong. And so that's a difficult change to make, because it affects so many champions, everything from like, you know, Rengar to, you know, Irelia, Fiora, Camille. A lot of these champions get this item. So, but all of those champions are very good. That's the thing. You know, if you think about the champions that like to get this early, Jax, all of them, all of those fighters are really strong. I think fighters are overall the strongest class of champion right now. I know his Shinshin is like rolling over in his grave keyboard, I guess, because his soul died many years ago. I don't know. But, you know, they just are. Like, that's it. Like, Irelia, Aatrox, Camille, Fiora, Jax, all these champions are super strong right now, and they all use Tiamat. So I think that's a pretty good way across the board to nerf some of them a little bit, to, you know, delay their power spike for at least 30 more seconds for one more wave. So I think that's fair. Now, they didn't nerf, like, they can still hit their Titanic Hydra and Ravenous Hydra power spikes faster if they want. A lot of these champions don't ever even upgrade to that, so interesting way to do it. And then finally, we have the Zeke's nerf. I don't like it. I mean, I think that Zeke's is one of the only items that is keeping support tanks in the game right now. It is a very powerful interaction. And in the sense that, you know, it gives your AD carry that power spike, right? So it allows your AD carry to have the power early to sort of match the Ardent Sensors out there, to match, you know, the buff that Janna gives or the buff that Lulu gives, or just like the insane, you know, team fight presence of Sona. And I feel like tanks need something that is like a very early game accessible item that can help out with either team fights or with AD carry. That used to be Locket. You know, historically it was, you know, Aegis of the Legion, and then it was Bulwark, and then it became Locket. But then Locket is just bad to rush, and they made it that way to where it scales with items, and you have to have a lot of HP to make it worth it. It doesn't have CDR on it. It doesn't have health on it. It's just a trash item early on. Like, you want to get it maybe third item. So you can't really rush Locket. Knight's Vow is still something that's fairly reasonable to get. That's bad on Thresh. Thresh is on the strong side right now. You know, he's got like a, not too strong. He's got like a 50% win rate, but everybody and their mother plays Thresh, and he's a hard champion to play. So if Thresh has a 50% win rate, that's like, you know, that's doing really well for Thresh. So I just feel like this is going to hurt champions like, you know, Tom Kench a lot. It's going to hurt Alistar, Leona. Like, a lot of these champions that are, like, okay, but aren't, like, super oppressive right now. Because now your AD carry is not going to do as much damage. You're still going to have to get this a lot of times. But effectively, instead of your AD carry doing 25 on hit damage, they're going to do 15. So this damage is over 2 seconds. So, you know, in solo queue right now, like I said, tank supports are the weakest class of supports. So I don't really understand. I mean, it's for pro play, right? But pro play, like, the itemization doesn't matter as much in pro play. You're just looking for something that can't get picked off, that has good CC, and then usually you just buy your tier 2 boots, your tier 3 ward item, and a bunch of control wards, and that's all you get in pro play. You know, occasionally you might be able to complete one item, and you could still just go for Knight's Vow and be all right, you know. But it's in solo queue where this hurts, because you have to have, like, multiple items in solo queue, because a lot of people are going to die. There's going to be a lot of gold floating around, and enchanters are just going to, they already outscale you so hard because all of their items have such great synergy with their kits and with the other items. You know, when you get something like Ardent Sensor, Redemption, and either Mikhail's or Athene's Unholy Grail, all of those items have so much synergy with each other. They're just going to blow the tanks out of the water late game. Like, all tanks have late game at this point. It's just they're engaged. They don't have good, you know, items, really. And so this is going to exacerbate that problem for solo queue. And I don't think it's going to matter for pro play as much. You know, you're still going to see Braum picked. You're still going to see Alistar picked in pro play, most likely, because they're not picking them for multiple item, like, compounding and scaling, because you don't get multiple items in pro play most of the time as a support. So I think this disproportionately hurts solo queue. So I don't like that. I would just, you know, I would try to nerf just individual tanks that are overperforming at the pro level, in addition to, like, their pro uses, which is usually their, like, engage and survivability in all-in situations. So, and sustain in lane. Like, they could have nerfed Alistar's Roar also. The heal on his Roar, I think, would have been better. But anyways, it's okay. It's definitely going to kick the tanks down a little bit more. So people that like tanks, I'm sorry, it's going to be rough out there. Thresh is going to be one of the harder hit champions. You know, I'll have to think about this a little bit more. We might be back to going something like Redemption on Thresh early. A lot of people aren't doing that. I did look up. I think a lot of people aren't really adjusting. I mean, maybe it's not that bad. Maybe you still just have to get Zeke's anyways. Just hold your nose and just buy the Zeke's. He has 53% win rate at Challenger. There are some people that are experimenting with other builds. You know, you've got the Locket here. A couple of people are going back to an early Locket. But by and large, it looks like most people are still doing kind of the Zeke's build. Righteous Glory is too expensive. You are seeing people circle back towards Redemption a little bit more early on. Kind of maybe the Redemption Locket build starts coming back a little bit. So we'll see. I'll have to crunch some numbers on it. I'll make some good recommendations in my tier list video, so be sure to check that out. But yeah, that's going to be it for this video. I don't want it to be too long. So I think there are some pretty significant changes, not as much as people thought, because, you know, we don't have the Orin changes, we don't have the Sejuani changes, or the Vayne changes, or any of those other things, the Callista changes. I assume a lot of that's going to be coming out 9.1 or 9.2. So we'll stay tuned for that. I will continue to talk about the PvE during streams, and I might make a video, you know, sometime in between, you know, maybe early January, where I just talk about some of the changes that are circulating around, and then of course I'll have, you know, up-to-date patch notes and tier lists once they eventually start Season 9. But that's going to be it. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content, helps other people find it, and I'll see you next time. Have a great day.